Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of On the Horizon. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Eric Collette with me. Eric, how's it going?
Very good, very good. Hi, Andy, how you doing?
Good. You're officially a co-host. I didn't give you the title correctly. And Gabe Knuth's on with us. Uh, Gabe is officially a co-host too, but we don't see him enough, so we're calling him a guest slash co-host.
That's fine.
And
Good to be back. My calendar thanks you for that.
Yeah. Well, and you're always welcome to show up. And if you don't, Eric and I will cover the topic and do the best we can. But it's always great to have you.
That's great. Yeah, Eric's a fantastic co-host, so nominated. For
Well,
sure.
thank you, and appreciate you, Gabe, for showing up. It's great.
You know what? I like to think of you as my safety net, because if I say something completely BS, that Eric's like, "Whoa, hang on, dude." So no, this is great.
Yeah, Eric's like that honest mechanic.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason it's clanking because you did something wrong. Yeah.
So we had a little trouble getting into the Zoom session, which is a SaaS-based product. It has a client application, but it's mostly SaaS controlled, and we'll call it a PaaS that has a SaaS concept to it, or maybe we'll just call it SaaS. And the joke we were talking about before, that all of us are former systems admins, consultants, something. And the conversation we were having before we hit record was, in the world of applications, client server applications, if something broke, it's because something happened, and more than likely it was caused because somebody changed something. It could be something very buried in the system, but somebody changed something. That's what breaks almost everything. If I were to say that in the world of SaaS applications, there's a chance that somebody outside of your organization changes something and breaks it. And all of a sudden that theory of who in my company changed it, all of a sudden becomes who out of a million people changed something. Do you guys, am I paranoid?
No, I mean, honestly, the link that you sent out hadn't changed. It was the back end did change something. I mean, updates are terrifying, but they roll out constantly now.
Yeah.
SaaS is all about evolution. It's all about speed and time to market. And now you have this situation where you can't test everything. So
You can't test anything when it's SaaS almost.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
It's
and I don't know if you did
force.
this. There was an email that came out 10 minutes before the meeting that this was that it was some update. I didn't make an update. I don't think you made an update, but it was some update to the meeting that came through. Nothing else changed about the time or anything like that. I assume it was just like, Zoom thought, oh crap, we had a good link. Let's send them a bad one. And then, no, that's not fair. Zoom is awesome. We love Zoom, but
Loves it.
But I can tell you it wasn't me making a change, because everything in my world is reactionary these days. So it would have been 2 minutes after the meeting started. That's when I would have made it.
do you guys know this Eisenhower chart philosophy to like giving yourself priorities, where you make this like grid of like this 2x2 grid, and you have urgent and important, and then not urgent and not important, and you align things in this grid based on this. And for me, literally everything I have to do winds up in urgent and important. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
It's insane. And I feel bad for the two things that are in the not urgent and not important thing, because that basically means they will never get done.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, question,
lower
Gabe, is there, I assume you're pointing at a whiteboard off in the distance there or
I am.
something.
Yeah.
Is there a software version of what you just said? Because I'd be very interested in that.
I don't know if there is or not. The Eisenhower chart thing is easy to find just on the Google. I still like having a whiteboard.
Yeah.
It's just, I work better that way. But certainly if I start traveling more again, I'll go back to trying to do this in Evernote or OneNote or something. Because I can't have a to-do list, because that to-do list, I never purge it. It just, it's 300 items long. And a lot of the stuff I don't even remember what it meant when I put it on there, or I don't take it off when I'm done. Like, it's just, I'm not organized enough to do that. But this way, this keeps me a little bit on my toes.
Well, so we're going to go way down this rabbit hole, but if it's urgent and important, if you're like me, you get those done and you're so relieved and so tired that the other quadrants never get done. Is that true?
Yes.
More or less.
Yes, it is. They call it back burner for a reason. And,
Yeah.
it's the same stuff that sits there for ages and ages. And when you actually try and eat it, it's, ooh.
Yeah. And the important but not urgent quadrant is, so important is on a row and not important is on a row, and then urgent and not urgent. eventually what happens is if something is important and not urgent,
Yeah.
the closer we get to whenever that's due, it moves
Tips over. Yeah.
over into the important and urgent.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I got a kid going off to college that needs that. I may sit down with him tonight and talk through that. His mom would be so proud of me if I did that.
See, that's amazing. You get dad points for that.
I have one other comment to you guys on this SaaS and loss of control kind of. Do you guys experience on a daily basis, more or less, that you have a application that you open in a browser and you see everything on the screen you need, but the browser's not through loading, and you go to click on something, and about the time you click on it, that thing moves and something else takes its place, and you just change something you didn't intend to change? Do you guys have that happen to you?
Oh,
all the time. I just think
All
I'm
the
way faster than everything else. I think it's just getting in the way. No, but yes, that happens a lot.
yeah, it happens a ton.
I think that's extremely scary. And I bet a lot of mistakes happen throughout the day because the browser and the loading process, like it's almost like applications should have a message on the screen that says loading, loading, loading. I think we used to have that. And it tells you when it's done versus the human just trying to interpret when it's done.
Maybe that's our fault, because for years we kept saying like how we don't want to wait to interact with our desktops. And so we, over time, the world changed to make it so that you can interact with the desktops more quickly.
Yeah.
But that has the side, I'm going to call it a benefit, but it's not really, of, making everything interactive as it comes up immediately all at once.
Yeah.
And so maybe we caused that in end user computing.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, in our
So
world,
UX, go ahead.
in our world, we had that for a long time, like in loading the profile, right? You can interact with the profile
That's
before
what I was
the
thinking
actual
of.
profile finished loading.
Yeah.
All
That's what I
right.
was
Well,
thinking of.
we've chewed up 20 minutes already between
Boom.
having issues and other things. We've got a really big topic to cover. Gabe, you wrote a blog a few weeks, maybe a month ago now.
I wrote 3 in like
17th
1
of June.
week, and they all published in successive weeks. So you're going to have to, we'll specify which one we're talking about here.
Yeah, you looked
Is
really
it-
productive there for a little while. Was that intentional or unintentional? It sounds like it was
I
unintentional.
was about to go on vacation, so it was very intentional.
Yeah, things must have moved on to that urgent line all of a sudden.
Very much so. I did not want to have to write blogs on vacation. I spent a very long time doing that over the years.
So the title of this is why VMware Horizon is the clear choice to replace your legacy desktop virtualization environment, aka platform, software, whatever. And so this is good. I mean, it's interesting timing. If I'm being totally honest, sometimes the reason to replace one with another is because you're tired of working with the other sales team. But that's a challenge that I've faced the last 2 days that I
We'll
can't
take
go
it.
into here. But anyway, so Gabe, you want to set us up with your intro here and why this is an important topic to be talking about for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that increasingly we have these conversations with customers as they're faced with needing to expand their environment to the cloud, or needing to change the way that they do desktop virtualization, whether that's because of some external driver like COVID or remote work, or whether that's from a contract renewal or hardware running it to the end of its lifespan, all sorts of different things. And we can kind of talk about some of the other ones as we go through this, but we just find ourselves having these conversations with customers that are either thinking about switching or are evaluating just kind of where they go from here. And they're just trying to figure out what to do with their legacy platforms. And so I wanted to sit down and write this out just in terms of why we think VMware is the better choice for you, or at least why, as a customer or potential customer, I guess, you should give VMware a look. And so that's what this article and some of the other ones have been about, is just like, hey, just in case you didn't know, VMware does this stuff, and this is why VMware, these are the areas where VMware is unique in the market. Yeah,
and Gabe, this is a big part of an IT or a company's IT department and shop, right? And I think a lot of companies have just gotten complacent with working whoever they're working with, and this is a great way to kind of flush out some of the, some of the industry folks, you in this case, talking about things to consider versus just being status quo, and at least making sure people know that if you're not at least considering what you should be doing going forward, you should be considering it. And here's why to consider the VMware workspace platform, which has got a big dose of Horizon as the answer.
Yeah, I think every company's number one competitor is business as usual, right? And so there's always that. Whatever's the new thing coming in has to be better than what was there for some reason. There has to be some reason to upgrade it. Regardless, you don't even have to switch vendors. It's still whatever, you're not going to upgrade to Horizon 8 unless it has a different feature than Horizon 7 had for you, or some reason to do that. It doesn't have to be a technical reason. It could be a cost advantage. It could be maybe it's a user experience thing or something like that. It doesn't have to be like, you just really want to use the latest versions of things. But in a lot of ways, sorry, Eric, were you going to say?
Oh, that's the geek answer. The geek answer is, oh, I want the latest. But at the same time, the latest in production doesn't always equate to the best experience. You have to have a process and a flow. So absolutely.
Yeah. And so with this article, what I wanted to do was show was what was unique about Horizon, because what I want to make clear is that Horizon, while the language we use, the things, what we call the different components of our infrastructure, and we have different names for everything, right? It's like pooled and personal, or that's Microsoft lingo. I forget what ours are. Like, there's so many different names for things, that admins get kind of lost in this kind of world. But really, what I wanted to show was there are unique things, unique capabilities about Horizon and its interaction with the whole other rest of the VMware ecosystem that allow it to satisfy all the use cases that companies currently have today. Even if it might be a little bit different in terms of the way that we hit those, we can still solve those use cases and hopefully expose some benefits that maybe a customer wouldn't have had access to before.
Hey, you guys hold me accountable for this statement. To me, VMware has had an interesting play here because you own an infrastructure that the others don't own and will never own, tried to, but couldn't. And you necessarily aren't the first to market with the original concept, but you get to pick and choose from the things that you feel like are the best of the legacy.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, and we get to take those things, the kind of the things that the cream of the crop, right? That is on top of the legacy. We get to take those and modernize them as well. We bring them along with us. App Volumes is a great example where App Volumes traditionally is installed locally. It's got its own database. It's got its own server to storage to host the applications and packages and stuff. And now we're taking that, because it's such a powerful component of the Horizon offer, the Horizon platform. We're taking that and merging the App Volumes functionality into the Horizon control plane. So now you can package one time and deploy anywhere from that one interface. And if you look at Horizon Cloud on Azure specifically, it has support for App Volumes management, App Volumes packages, but there's no App Volumes infrastructure to deploy because all of the App Volume stuff is just baked into the managed service offering that is Horizon Cloud. So we're taking the cool parts of App Volumes and we're throwing away the stuff that the customer has to manage. We're taking that on ourselves, and we've modernized App Volumes.
Yeah, and that's probably the easiest one. In fact, it's kind of dead center on your graphic here. It's all about apps at the end of the day, even if you're using the Windows app to get to all the other apps. And that's a great example. I guess I would also add, and this is kind of a business part of the conversation. I get your response to this. As a company that has a massive portfolio of things, you don't have to hedge the entire company on the success of EUC every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact is each one of these, and this may be a benefit, maybe a detriment, honestly, and I'll just say that out loud, because each of our BUs, our business units, are these whole and complete platforms. But this idea of incorporating anywhere workspace is pulling in security and networking and application delivery in various forms. and trying to blend this up together. And that's not always a digestible approach,
Yeah.
but it's something that needs to happen. We need to unify most of these streams in order for things to work.
Yeah, and
And
that's why Anywhere Workspace isn't a SKU.
yeah,
You know,
it
like
can't be just a SKU. Yeah.
right, because there's so many different BUs involved. However, VMware has all of the technology, and we have the playbooks for how to implement these things and use them all together.
Yeah.
But it's not the kind of thing we can just like slap a SKU on and be like,
Yeah.
all right, go sell Anywhere Workspace, right?
Yeah.
And every company might need something a little bit different, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of more like a recipe.
Hey, I want to say this. I want to see your faces when I say it. It's only software. Why can't it be an everything SKU at a very digestible price? Because man, would that drive business galore if it was, or are the guys with all the MBAs smarter than us and they know that's not a true statement?
That's a decision that's clearly above my pay grade.
Wow,
And
yeah.
Oh yeah, I just
will
want to
not
get you on the
comment.
record as your opinion, though.
My opinion? Oh, I don't know. Opinions are dangerous at this point, but I would say it would be really nice if it was a clean and digestible one shot. However, each one of these products is, there is actually a hardware component if you look at the SD-WAN VeloCloud piece.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
still.
But outside of that, it's just a bunch of software. Let's just go sell it. Let's
That's
help
like
people
saying
implement it.
a VM is just a file, Andy. I don't know why this is so hard.
I don't know. All right. So let's walk through this blog and we never get there. The first topic that's called out after the introduction is VMware Horizon, the core of any remote work platform. I think we're kind of talking about that, but let's make sure we hit it as intended.
Yeah. So this was if you look at our Anywhere Workspace story, that centers around things like it's centered on Workspace ONE, VMware SASE, and Carbon Black. And where's Horizon in there? Horizon's actually part of Workspace ONE in that story, so it's a big part of it. But Anywhere Workspace is the solution for as people kind of emerge from the pandemic, right? And we need to have one cohesive platform to allow customers to work from anywhere. So that makes sense. But if we focus just on remote work, you can't have remote work without Horizon. And so that's why I started this with, Horizon is the core of any remote work platform, because, we're talking about giving customers or end users access to those applications they would have had access to on premises.
And you're talking x86 Microsoft based applications,
Windows apps,
desktop or no desktop, right?
Windows
or no Windows.
Windows apps and Windows desktops. Yeah. And to be fair, we do Linux and stuff as well, but yes, right. For the most part, I'm thinking Windows. I don't think I mentioned Linux anywhere in that article. We do have them. So Horizon, I wanted to elevate Horizon as part of that Anywhere Workspace story. And I did it in this way because I wanted to highlight the fact that most customers, there are many customers running competitive solutions on vSphere, and customers that are doing that aren't getting the full set of capabilities that vSphere offers when used with the desktop virtualization platform, unless they're using Horizon with that. And by that, I mean instant clones and app volumes and then the hybrid image management and all those capabilities as well. But instant clones is a Horizon exclusive thing. And since Horizon only runs on VMware vSphere, that's how you get that instant clone capability. App volumes can do VMDK files and VHDs. Obviously you get, there's a little bit of different functionality between them. And so you do get the additional VMDK capability with app volumes if you're using the VMware SDDC too.
That kind of goes back to what I was talking about a while ago. You own the infrastructure layer of what this runs on. Therefore, you can do special things to make it different and better.
And then underneath in that infrastructure layer is where NSX plugs in, because it's not just vSphere we're talking about. We're talking about the whole VMware software-defined data center. So that includes NSX for virtual networking. We've got Avi, VeloCloud for load balancing and SD-WAN. Carbon Black is integrated into this now. And so we have this kind of top to bottom integration between everything. And then on top of that, we have Workspace ONE, and Workspace ONE Access, which is the intelligent hub and sort of the application and user portal and things like that, that comes with the licensing for Horizon. And so you also get to dip your toe into the Workspace ONE water, and at least use that as the interface to all of your desktops and applications.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I want to highlight is just this one complete ecosystem is one vendor that is strategic in many organizations already, or trusted in many organizations already, but using all of the things available, you can have one vendor to support your entire work from home or remote work initiative.
And I want Eric to chime in. I will like one other point on that whole concept of one vendor to trust and work with. There's a ton of existing CIOs out there that made their career on a physical to virtual transformation using VMware in the data center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I will say that it's a mantra that still sticks today. We are providing this platform that gives you intrinsic security. Intrinsic meaning you don't need to update definitions for a lot of this stuff. You don't need to, it's not reactive. It's not a responsive, or it's a responsive situation, but it's not a reactive situation.
Yeah.
When something starts to go awry, like when you have a ransomware attack, or if something gets into one of the virtual machines, those things are immediately quarantined. They're held at bay, encapsulated, and everything is done automatically. And Carbon Black, for instance, will look at runaway scripts and things like that to protect the environment from something that could try and damage it, or something that could try and harvest information from it.
Yeah.
I love that it all is connected behind the scenes in the infrastructure, whereas all of these other tools that sit on top, they can merely just work along. You don't need Carbon Black, but Carbon Black would keep you safe.
Well, and an example of that, and maybe you said this, is I'm going to use another industry term from another vendor. I think you guys may or may not use it, but like hypervisor introspection, where we're doing, AV type of work at the hypervisor below the desktop Windows level, and that gets us in efficiencies of performance and scale.
Yeah, we can scan many virtual machines at once. We can handle the traffic that's happening at those levels. NSX is a perfect example of that too. Making sure things are happening that are supposed to happen, and using a zero trust methodology.
And I think that, and maybe the app volumes is the example you give here, but I think that kind of leads us to the next section about simplicity and speed all bundled up in one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of this, and we touched on some of the security elements of this article as well. But actually, when we talked about how we got to take some of those components that were beneficial in the legacy world, modernize them, elevate them kind of into the modern world, like app volumes. App volumes is now part of our simplified application management technology. I can't call it a product, but we abbreviate it SAM. So, but simplified application management for us basically means package once, deploy anywhere. When you package an application, we could do a whole session or podcast just on this, and we absolutely should. But imagine creating an application instance or just an object, right, called Acrobat, and within that you can have separate Acrobat packages, whether that's an Acrobat Pro package or an Acrobat Reader or different versions of Acrobat, and between those you can assign those individual packages to end users, and you can even mark those packages as the current one, so you can say I want to deploy the current version of Acrobat to these users. All of that is done from, it can be done from with one set of packages from one interface. Eric, how much did I get wrong there?
No, actually, I think about.
I don't want to overdo it.
Remember when ThinApp, very, very ThinApp, in the sense of ThinApp was a great solution. It was a great tool. It's an antique, but at the same time, it had that same principle of, we could package something, we could easily have somebody launch the most iterative version or the latest version by iterating on the names and so forth. It was kind of a manual process, a little bit hacky, but at the same time, App Volumes has taken the paradigms that were introduced in the thin app world and iterated them to a much more package friendly, like you say, deploy, create package once, deploy anywhere situation. I feel good about what you said.
I just want to make sure I'm not overselling it, because I really like what we've got there with App Volumes. I think it's really special, and I want to make sure I don't get too far out over my skis with it. I will say, we had Ron Oglesby on a couple of weeks ago, and Ron was talking about 3 things that he liked about App Volumes. I think in the future we could do a deeper dive, maybe even bring on the product manager and go to a whole other level with it.
So let me break it down 2 ways. You got the app volumes conversation we've been having here, which my application centric administrators should be excited about. And then we have the instant clone stuff you guys talked about a while ago. I got to admit, 2-3 years ago, when I was getting into the VMware side of this business, instant clones were one of the options. Now it is the main option. I believe it is the primary solution for cloning, non-persistent, pooled. We use the pooled word from earlier. And I got to admit, when that was the aha moment for me, when I saw the way that works, that was, if I'm on the infrastructure side of this desktop and app virtualization conversation, when I see instant clones, I'm like, whoa, that's something other people can't do.
Yeah. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. This is like thousands of desktops in the time it takes to get a cup of coffee, right?
Maybe, yeah. Depends on how you get your coffee.
Yeah. Okay, a latte.
How long does that? Yeah, a latte. Get a latte.
But no, that was the honest mechanic answer right there.
There you go. Clank, clank.
Give me 3 extra seconds.
Oh, and it's because it's operating almost exclusively out of RAM, and we have the vSAN powering it behind the scenes. Maybe, I mean, it could be any sort of different storage solution, but SSDs are burning fast. You got NVMe's powering this stuff, and you do have instant clones. It's so fast, and you can have, very similar to what we did with Horizon previously, we can have a few machines spun up pre just waiting in the wings, but it doesn't take long for that queue to fill back up. So if 100 people hit it all at once, that queue is already filled by the time that last one boots, because you can just iterate out of memory, and that is fast. It's super fast.
Yeah, and imagine the other way, the old way, I guess you could call it, where if you knew that your peak user login time was going to be 8 a.m., you had to start firing up desktops at 7 or 6:30 or whatever, just to have enough ready for that peak time. And now you can turn on a dime.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to potentially cause a stir by saying this. Yeah, you mentioned the old way. When I think old way, I think network booting technologies, Pixie boot like provisioning services. And when I have this conversation, I still get people say that to me. I'm like, my goodness, are you thinking about why don't you just shoot yourself before you go down that road?
PVS is the thing that will not go away.
No.
Right.
Well, as long as you don't mind depending on your network team to boot your machines, you're fine.
Yeah. Yep. But man, there are some serious PVS fans out there, and hard to blame them. I mean, because back in the day, holy cow, what a mind shift it was. But yeah, it's funny.
Well, people, in my opinion, like PVS because it's something that other people don't know and understand, and it seems like black magic, and it makes them feel like they know something others don't.
That's funny.
That's waning. That's not true anymore. But 2 or 3 years ago, that was definitely true. And when you showed up as, in my case, like the sales guy, I knew more about it than they did. And they, oh, wait a minute.
you know, it's funny. I just watched War Games with my son. That seemed like black magic to him too, where like you could use a phone to call a computer. Yeah. Like, so that seemed like black magic too. So apparently it boomerangs back around.
It does.
The black magicness of it.
Let's talk about this next piece, which is the best digital workspace experience.
Before we do that, can I mention Dynamic Environment Manager too? Because I think that's I think that's often overlooked. Especially, this is kind of near and dear to my heart, because prior to VMware, I was at Microsoft, and I was only at Microsoft because Microsoft acquired FS Logics, where I was working at the time. Yeah. And even when I was at FS Logics, we would talk about how Dynamic Environment Manager would add user environment management capabilities on top of the FS Logics profile container and Office 365 container stuff. Yeah. And that same thing is true today. So you can use DEM with FS Logics because FS Logics doesn't do any of that stuff. So you get the best of both worlds. You get that FS Logics technology, which is still amazing and solves all those problems with folder redirection and roaming profiles and app data roaming and things like that. Plus you get all the awesome DEM features. Like I'm gonna way fall short, but like things like privilege elevation and application settings enforcement, and even drive mappings and policies and stuff like that. Eric, there's got to be stuff I left off that list.
Yeah, there's a lot, but just to simplify it, you're absolutely right. On a per individual, per application policy delivery, it's phenomenal. And having that configured immediately when somebody drops in, I mean, you could do it by group or you can do it by individual.
Yeah.
I mean, the scale of it is incredible, and it's so much simpler, and it's so much lower impact to what we're used to.
And all these are built into Horizon. They're not like additional products.
So it makes pooled machines personal, at scale, with simplicity, with management. I think I just summed up everything you guys were saying. It is that magical piece that we used to chase like it was some nirvana, and now we're here because of FS Logics and the other environment management pieces that you guys are adding here. And it's like, like when my son, who will probably be in this business at some point, or some of his friends do this, they'll never have to know about the stuff that we all used to think was like the holy grail.
Yeah.
Application compatibility scripts. Does that ring a bell? These kids know nothing today.
Yeah. Just the idea you had to install an app under, the install switch or the execute switch after you got done. And they'll never know.
Yeah. Well, command line in general.
Yeah.
Right.
Seriously.
You would publish a bat file so that it would launch the application the right way, or some other script.
Yeah.
Config sys and auto exec. Yeah. All that.
So Eric, you may not have been doing this long, maybe you have, but Gabe, do you remember publishing explorer.exe with a switch so that the desktop would pop up?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you bet. And I remember going into customer sites needing to get a desktop, but they didn't have one published. And like, so you just go to like Word, you open up Word and then go to help. And there was something in there that lets you open up a command prompt or type in a command. Yeah. And so you could go to like help about, and then type in CMD and it would open up, or they could type in Explore and it would open up your desktop. Yeah.
All right. So I guess the new holy
so where all my hair went
is the idea that you bring all this stuff together in a digital workspace that enables user-friendly digital transformation of the endpoint. And that is what we're talking about in this section. We talk about the best digital workspace experience. Gabe, why is yours the best digital workspace experience?
Well, I'll be honest. For this section of this post, I stuck to the Horizon side, but we have this whole digital workspace platform in Workspace ONE that we can, we could add more detail to. Eric, maybe you can do that. Well, but
no, keep it on Horizon only. So let me apologize to the audience and you. I took digital workspace to mean the new world of SaaS base and workspace landing page, single sign-on. What you're doing is what I do a lot of times, which is have the conversation with people that are the Windows, the physical desktop, like the wood thing that you sat in front of in 1978 is your desktop. At some point that became the software thing that was on a monitor in front of you. And for this sake, that's kind of where you're talking about here. We're still the most widely used digital workspace on the planet is the Windows desktop today.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is where you're pointing out you guys have done a good job to make that even more usable.
Yeah. And so what I pointed out here, and I think we've talked about it on this podcast before, is that, we've got things like the BLAST protocol, right? And the BLAST protocol features something called a BLAST Extreme Advanced Transporter BEAT that adapts to changing network conditions on the fly. And so that means that, when a user's working at the office, right, on premises, they're on the corporate controlled network, and hopefully that's pretty robust wherever they happen to go. But nowadays, when they're working remotely, they could be anywhere in their house. They could be in the attic or in a bedroom or in the kitchen on a network that they installed, right? So, maybe they're just using the cable modem that the cable installer came and shoved into the basement somewhere. Or maybe they're using their cell phone connection while they're at a coffee shop or whatever, or they're at a shared Wi-Fi connection in the coffee shop. But the point is that the network is not in our IT's control anymore. And so its reliability is a subject of debate these days. But Beat, the adaptive transport part of the Blast protocol, adapts to those changing network conditions and ensures that a user is getting a high quality experience all the time. And we combine that with other things like SD-WAN, we can ensure that's both robust and secure so that they can stay productive.
Yeah.
Well,
I would say that Beat has this mini software version of the SD-WAN components built into it, like pinging to make or sending extra packets that has information and details, and it's translated on the other side, so that now that communication that's going back and forth is saying, okay, let's pull down the stream a little bit, we're getting some patches here, let's buffer here, let's make this line a little bit more clear and concise. And we can give a really reasonable experience on a very low bandwidth connection, as long as we are throttling it and understand that we're throttling it on either side to adapt. So that's exactly what Beat's pulling off.
Yeah, and we can combine that with vGPU support and then specific optimizations in the protocol for real-time audio, video, and Teams and things like that. We've had customers move their call centers to Horizon and shut down their call center data centers in the last year. Because the real-time audio video experience is so good with Horizon that they don't need to maintain these on-premises call centers anymore. So I think that's a great description of how we maintain a collaborative, productive user experience, and that doesn't even get into the Workspace ONE like out-of-box experience, unified endpoint management, modern management, all that stuff. That doesn't even touch that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I think Horizon has a good enough story on its own.
I had lunch with a new guy that's going to move into this EUC as a sales engineer / salesperson at some point after he graduates from college in a few weeks. And I was just trying to explain TCP versus UDP and bandwidth versus latency. And, that. So I say this all the time, and you guys will probably agree. I'd get your take on it. The companies like VMware have done amazing software things like Extreme Blast, Blast Extreme. And at the same time, we've had the benefit of moving from 15K dial-up connections over a RAS server to LTE, 5G potentially all surrounding us. I'm a little scared about all the waves that are around me right now and what that might do to my long-term health, but I think
I'm done procreating, so I feel like I'm okay.
But my point there is that the software and things have made, in hardware, but mostly software, has made this so much better. And then around us, the networks have become faster and more reliable, for like a T-Mobile commercial. But that's so true. And we just have the benefit of all those things working together to make what used to go, or still does in some cases, but was invented to go from a display card in your machine across a little cable into a monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, perfect examples of network robustness is being able to do game streaming from a distance. I mean, that blows my mind. And the experience is not always as, but bulletproof as you expect, because you have latency. You can't defeat time and space.
Speed of light.
Light speed is just going to happen. Yeah. There's always that limitation, but we can get away with a whole lot, especially if it's close by.
Yeah. Hey, we got about 11 minutes left before we all turn into pumpkins. This next section, hybrid delivery and management at scale. Where is this story as it relates to Horizon?
Well, I'll use that same company that sold off their call center buildings because they used Horizon. That customer actually started to use Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure for that, because they needed to expand as a COVID response. They needed to expand quickly, and they couldn't acquire new hardware for their own data centers and rack it, stack it, power it, and cool it in time to keep these users productive. So they branched out to the cloud. But they also still had an on-premises environment used for the non-call center users, including developers. And so today, this customer is able to have both a Horizon Cloud environment for the call center users, an on-premises Horizon environment for administrative workers and things like that. And they're actually going to build a Horizon on Azure VMware solution environment for the developers. And we haven't really touched on this before, but Horizon on Azure VMware solution Azure VMware solution is basically it's vSphere as a service sold by Microsoft and managed by Microsoft in Azure. And you can run Horizon in that. And so this hybrid management and delivery and scale, this is giving this customer the ability to manage all of these different Horizon environments from a single pane of glass, as if they were the same environment.
Connected. Yeah. All interlaced together. The control plane lets you look at your on-premise environment, looks Horizon Cloud on Azure environment, and various others. Just deliver your instant clones to each one, and your applications, the application packages. It really universalizes all of that. That's a universal broker, but
for sure, universal broker. And multi-cloud assignments is part of that too, where you can make an assignment one time and have it apply across all users and all environments. And that universal broker gives customers and users one interface to go to access those wherever they happen to be. And admins can configure intelligent routing. So like if a user is on a client that has certain capabilities, maybe it routes them to a Horizon Cloud instance, or if the customer is coming from a remote location, it will route them to the closest data center or whatever. Admins can configure policies to route users intelligently.
Smart.
So I don't know which one of you I need to do this, but I would love to follow up on that call center example, because call centers are, I think microcosms is the right word of this, but use of the word, but those are great. Complex ones are great case studies because pretty much everything has to happen. Real-time collaboration, phone calls, data, massive data flows. Anyway, I don't know which one of you, but I don't want to disrupt the rest of this and we don't have a lot of time left, but we'll go to the next section. Intrinsic end-to-end security. We've touched on this a little bit, but I think this is certainly an area where VMware has invested in buying products that, in addition to the fact that a presented workload is secure somewhat by default, but adding the other pieces to the security story is where you guys have, is why Gabe has it in the article, I think.
Yeah, I put it here, and I think we touched on most of this already, but I just want to kind of reinforce that was one problem when everybody was working on premises or in branch office buildings on company-owned devices, but that is yesterday's IT world. And I don't even mean like pre-COVID VM, everybody's world. I mean like that's 10 years ago. Today, everybody has different devices, different connections, personal devices, corporate devices. That's a whole mix of everything. There's different apps and more threats out in the world. VMware's approach to security is vastly different than it would have been 10 years ago, or that your companies were 10 years ago. And we now have a modern end-to-end security platform that is ready for today's issues.
Yeah, and it's really hard to actually quantify this because we're so used to the whole antivirus solution as still being a thing. And this just is a step way beyond that. And the intrinsic nature of it is that it's inherently, you build it properly. And when you build it properly, it is watertight for the most part.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm like generating FUD when I try to talk about security and how like why you need to change the way you do security. I always feel like I'm trying to create a dragon just so I can slay it. But then I talk to customers and I hear what they're going through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what it's like to be you. That's terrible. Thankfully, we have all this stuff. Like,
yeah,
I'm glad I'm not a security person.
Yeah, very much.
Well, and like in the case of XenTegra, we have all this stuff. We actually use this stuff, and it creates intrinsic security value along the way. That watertight. That's like if I were to build a canoe, Eric, it would be watertight, and then the first leak would happen. But my point there is, you do the best you can. A lot of organizations need to realize that the best you can is not what they're currently doing.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Of course, you can always patch the canoe from within. It's just you still have to row for a little bit, get some duct tape, whatever that is.
You always have to be ready to make that adjustment. Okay, last section before the wrap up, and I think this one is huge if we put on our partnership and business conversation hat, and that is the fact that, again, you guys aren't a one-trick pony. You've got other areas of your business that provide for this one, both technically and financially. I think you guys have seen that you can't dictate how your customers buy your product. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So You are correct. We can't dictate things. I'll say it as people listening are like, but you're making us go to subscription. But that's, yes, like we're going to subscription licensing. We were probably the last company to do that. Among the last companies to do that. And when we did move to subscription licensing, we made sure that we kept the options as flexible as possible. Because we know what a pain that is for some customers that have been doing the same thing for years and years and years. But as the world has kind of moved towards a consumption model of things, that's where we're going as well. And so when we created the subscription licensing, we made sure to do it in a flexible way that delivered actual value. And that was important because other subscriptions are just like taking what you would spend over 3 years, slicing it up into whatever, divide it by 36, and then say, here, this is what you get. It's the same stuff you had before. You're just paying per month for it.
Yeah.
If you want to go that route, we can. But with our licensing now, the Horizon subscription licensing, you get access to everything we have. So that's the Horizon Universal and Horizon Apps Universal licenses are the two flagship ones. Horizon Universal is VDI and published desktops and applications. Horizon Apps Universal is just published desktops and applications. It's about half the price of Horizon Universal, just ballparking it. But both of those are full hybridity. They come with app volumes, dynamic environment manager. They come with the instant clones and power management and everything that we've been talking about. Yeah. And there's other options below there if you want. But we don't have a ton of time to get into them. But what I will say is that from the lowest offering to the highest offering that we have, there is no migration required.
And Gabe, does that mean I get the on-premises and the cloud-based version just out of those subscription models? There's no either in or out on those?
You can deploy desktops anywhere you want in all the places at any time. So yes, you get on-prem and cloud. There is one version, one edition of the subscription licenses, the Horizon App Standard subscription, that is a single location and doesn't have the hybrid capabilities, but it's also really cheap. And so but there's an upgrade path that's a checkbox that will open it up to be allowed to allowing a customer to deploy those desktops anywhere then without having to like migrate or do a forklift migration from one platform to another.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, take us home.
Look at so I wrote this article because this is what my life has been for the past year and a half, is trying to come up with the best way to describe why VMware is worth a shot if you're not a VMware customer. Historically, we've always kind of led with the technical side of the discussions, and we immediately like bring the product manager in and talk about that kind of the deep technical level stuff because we want to show who we are. But really, it's so much about the use cases that are out there for companies and whether or not we can solve their problems without breaking the bank. Do it in an effective way that hopefully simplifies the management of this environment and hopefully keeps the decision makers, the higher ups, happy too. And so that's why I wrote this article, because I just wanted to wrap up why VMware is in the position we're in and why people should take a look at us.
Well, I think that's important for three technical guys to realize that at the end of the day, it's the business and the intrinsic value that it brings to the business and the cost savings and the ability to do more with the business that ultimately trickles down into these, into the more technical conversations, which typically these things start in the technical realm, may or may not end up in the business world, but the business benefits is what really should be driving the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And we have the ability to run customers through scenarios and show them what cost savings would be, both hard and soft. I prefer to stick with the hard costs. The soft costs are kind of fluid, but sometimes it makes sense to factor those in too. But we can look at the value that app volumes brings to a customer, both in terms of cost savings that it can drive by reducing the number of base images and the amount of storage required, but also in terms of avoiding the cost of doing app management without an app management solution, right? Like the amount of time it takes an admin to manage apps without some sort of centralized solution is crazy. So we have the ability to take a deep look at that on a consultative basis. And that's the kind of stuff that we work with partners like you to to deliver as well. And so that's the kind of thing I would suggest folks reach out to XenTegra for, because they can certainly help guide you on that road.
Yeah, and it's great to have a consultant who can understand the products, who can show how it's going to be architected, how all these things will fit together. It's a services play. You know that you know the way that the stack works, and therefore you can pitch this appropriately and then deliver those solutions to the end user. And that's what,
Yep.
that's really important to us in our own positions.
And I appreciate you guys saying that. At the same time, the solutions are understandable and implementable, if that's a word, enough that you maybe can do it on your own. You may end up spending more time and more money, but there's so many resources out there, the things you guys make available to, you can give it a good run at it yourself.
All right, the back padding section is over. We did.
You can do it yourself, or you can have somebody help you do it. That's it.
Well, so I say this to you guys. You guys are of a certain age, like I am. I used the term RTFM the other day, Gabe. You know what that means?
Oh yeah.
Read the freaking manual, and my son looks at me and says, "What's a manual?" Like, oh, okay. Watch the YouTube video.
What's the new version of that?
Watch the YouTube video.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But document.
I have to run, Gabe. I'm going to look and see what else you wrote in your mad dash to go on vacation, and we'll do it again.
All right, sounds good, man. Take care.
All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, see ya.